Hi, I'm Honey Sonwani, and I work as a product engineer at Obvious. And thank you for coming to my talk. Sorry for the delay. Everybody's new to M8, where I think running with the production thing. And my topic for today is adding rules with Lint. So, um, I'd start with the problem that I personally faced and landed to Lint. When I first joined my current team, something that I struggled with a lot was maintaining the structure and code quality practices in the project. The team has very when a specific team has very specific code practices, that can be overwhelming for a new person who's joining in, and that results to, I think, if you have a habit of creating a PR, that would result in having multiple PR comments. For me personally, what happened was I could go through the code base and obviously deliver the functional requirements that I had. But what usually ended up happening was I used to get PR comments like I would get, you're missing the content description for an image, or you haven't ignored them, or you haven't added the unused namespaces for it, or any other coding structured practices that they had that I was missing, that ended up helping me with the understand lint. So hence difficulties in maintaining coding structure practices, and how lint can, we're just going to understand how lint can make things better with our structure practices. Then I thought of how lint can help me with this. Then, what Lint actually does is it actually goes through whole of your code and analyzes and gives you errors and warnings in written, and mm, so eventually, in the result, what it provides is a description and the severity level of it. So the major part that I really like about this is you can decide how severe is the error or the warning. If you want to provide an error that should not even compile, it's that very specific. It's the practice that you do not cannot compromise at all with. Then you obviously would add the severity level to error. If not, you can obviously choose. There are levels of it. We'll come to that in the moving slides. Fun fact about Lint that I realized was we approximately have 400 Lint specific issues packaged in our toolchain. When I say toolchain, it's actually AGP, that's Android Gradle plugin. So if then I thought of, if I already have 400 Lint rules, why would I want to create my own rules? So first, here's where you can find few of these, where you'd go to File, Preferences, then Inspections and Lint, and you can find the list. A few of them would be correctness, internalization, interoperability. So here is the list of it. Here's the question that I just mentioned. Why would I want to create my own rules? The reason being, the lint rules that we get in the toolchain will be applicable to the whole sum of multiple projects. I think it surrounds to, it comes to all of the projects. It's like universally available for all of the projects. But with custom rules that may or may not make sense for a different project, like for my current example for today, uh, it may be possible that I want to make sure that nobody misses a content description in my XML. So I would make sure that I have a lint rule for it. But you may or may not be bothered about that in your project. Hence, that can be not really helpful for you. So next would be, let's say I have an existing project and I want to add lint to it. So, and I don't know if the team members that I've been working with have been following the same practices so far or not. And I'm not sure how would we proceed further. And if I add lint, we'll have like thousands or I don't know, hundreds of errors that at the same time, or warnings that we'll get that we may or may not be able to handle. I think it's very I think it does not make sense to have all of these warnings together. So I want to ask Lint that please forgive me for all of the errors that I've made until now, and only focus on the new ones that I've made. Here comes Lint baseline. Lint baseline helps me achieve this. And where do I add the baseline for it? In the app build Cradle file, I would add something like baseline file, baseline lint baseline file.xml. Then I ask myself, uh, what how actually would this work internally? I cannot just add something because there's in the documentation. So I went and studied later. What lint actually does is it actually creates a snapshot of all of the warnings and errors so far that I've had, and it creates a baseline from it that from this it's like uh, it's like a baseline that tells lint that okay, only analyze from now on and not before this, hence creating a baseline for lint to scan. um, I think it's too much theory so far. I'm not sure what you think. So let's jump on creating one lint rule and experiment so far that I've said. Let's do this. So I've created a demo where it actually just creates a very small lint. Uh, Let me know if you have any questions so far, and let me know if I was a little very clear about how and why lint can be used in our project. So for starters, we create a different module for lint, a module that has an Android archive package or a jar package. We want to do that because we want to add the lint module as a package in our Android project. And when you create an AAR package, it actually creates the app package for you. So for me, it was something like this. And let's jump on to build creative file. I created a module. Then I added my lint dependencies for it, and I synced it. So once I've added, so this only works if I want to add a custom lint rule. If I want to check the rules that I already have, I can. So the path that I mentioned was file preferences, something like inspections. So here's a list of rules that you can see. I think most of these are enabled. You can also go through them and check what are the things that you don't need. It actually helps your build timing if you actually disable them if you don't need. Some the I want to show you what an inbuilt lint tool looks like. Uh, so I think this is okay. So this is what inbuilt lint tool looks like. So this is already there. I do not have to compile or run to see my lint tool that we already have. It says that it can lead to unpredictable and unrepeatable builds. Hence, change the version because it has been updated. So I added, coming back to lint, customizing lint and creating our own rules. I added my lint also. Then I added the lint module path in our build cradle app file. That's like lint checks project. The path is lint. Let's say my module name was something different. I would add my module name over here for Android packets to know that this is the module that I'm adding. It seemed like adding a library. This is a module that I'm adding, and please sync and let my this is where all of my lint rules and its dependencies are. Analyze all of this in my code. So once I've done that, I add resources meta file. This is a service locator for lint into our app. What I add over here is my issue registry path. So I would ask, what is this issue registry? So what issue registry it basically has all of the issues. It's like a register where all of we enter all of our issues that we want Lint to analyze. So whenever Lint runs, it actually would go through issue register and check all of the issues that I have over here. So let's say I do not have this. And for starters, I extend issue registry, create a class, and I have issue registry. It will actually ask me to override all of the stuff, list of issues that need to be overridden. Let's not come to suppress lint rules right away. I'd come back to that. So I added a list of issues. I'd go to my issue that I've created. So we extend detectors in our issue. What detector does is it actually analyzes through our element that we've provided lint, that this is the element that I want uh, to analyze, and it analyzes and gives us the results whether we have that thing or not. When I say thing, let's say we go through this example, what happens when lint runs. So it actually overrides get applicable elements. What this does is I give them the list of elements that I want to analyze. In my case, I want to analyze. So my basic custom rule that I want to make over here is please go to the image view and check if I'm adding image SRC or app compact SRC for adding my image into the image view. So I've added image view constant and applicable elements. Then I've overridden visit element. What visit element does is it actually tells Lynn that okay, this is the we've received the element and now let's analyze the element and then give them the results. So now I check whether my current element has the attribute that I want it to have. So I check if it has the SRC element attribute, and if not, it actually reports the issue. Report issue is not an overridden function, it's something that I've created privately for this class. What this actually does is I report an issue. Report is an inbuilt function. So we need to add image. Uh, you know how we saw in our inbuilt rule that when we hover over it, we can see the image description and, sorry, not image, our description for the rule and the error that it shows when we hover. It's the same thing over our custom rule. So I add the issue description and its name. ID, I'll tell you what ID means. So basic ID, brief description, explanation is something required for the user to see. Category is there are multiple categories, just like we saw when we were watching the custom mm, uh, the lint rules that we already have, correctness, compliance, accessibility, all of these are the categories that we have. We can add into any category. So right now I'm just correcting that whether I have this or not. Severity is something that I really like. So what error does is it actually shows me something like actually shows me something like this. So with this, I cannot move forward. If I would have added warning, it would have just been, let's just show you what happens when I add warning. So when I build, it actually gives me, so basically when I add a severity level to it, it depends on what severity level that I want it to be. So what we've done here is I can command written on it and it actually shows me what I actually wanted. This is what I've set in a custom rule. It changes to source app compact. Uh, So let's say I want to keep this for some reason. I decide I don't want to I don't want to follow code structure practices. I want to do something on my own. I don't know if anybody does that, but yeah. So what I do is I hover over image view and rules ignore, and then I can add my image source ID over here. This source over here. This actually ignores my error. Hence, let's come back to our issue. So, the main things to report an issue is having an issue. Here, we've created severity that has warning and implementation. So, implementation has its scope. So, for me, my scope is for resource file. There are multiple scopes for it. There's a source file or Gradle file scope, or there are multiple scopes for it. It depends on the lint rule that you are creating. So, we've created a lint rule. Let's come to suppressing lint rules. Uh, I hope I'm not going too fast. We just created a lint rule and we saw how we could create an error in our XML file. If you have any questions, post down. We can solve it later. So we're moving on. We're moving forward to suppress lint checks. So just like I said, we have so many enabled lint rules that already in our project. So we already have so many lint rules. I want to disable the ones that I do not need. So the reason why I'm doing that is because since Lint is checking so many errors that I do not need as well, it might increase the build time that we have. So there are three ways where we can suppress lint rules. One is suppress lint with an annotation. We can add the IDs that we do not want uh, to be analyzed. Second is just like we did in the XML files, tools ignore and adding the ID of the issue that actually ignores it. Third is doing it in the build cradle file, apps build cradle file, where I have three, not particularly three flags, it's just like severity flags. I can use disable or error warning, depends again on the severity level that I want it to be. And then I add my lint ID. I can add multiple lint issue IDs with the comma. One thing to note with suppressing lint rules is you can suppress a class, method, or a variable declaration. Also, another thing to note is when you suppress a class, so when you do not want a particular class to run that lint rule, you can only suppress, you can then suppress that particular class. If you want the whole lint rule to not run in your project, then you can suppress the whole lint. Performance in lint, something that I really like. Okay. So something that recently with 7.0 Canary, something that was launched was partial analysis. So if your project is huge and you have multiple modules into it, and I change one lint rule. So what used to happen before was all of the lint used to analyze all of the modules together, even though I change even one thing. So right now, after 7.0 Canary, what would happen would be I would change one module and it would only analyze or it would only run for that. So this actually helps with the performance. Second is using the specific target variant and not lint. What do I mean by use the specific target variant? So when you actually run lint via command line, that is slash gradle w lint, it would actually return you lint debug, and lint release. So if you do not have any specific project variant in your project, lint would create three by default for you, just like I said. So I think what I did for the first time was, since I did not know if I want to use lint debug or lint release, I directly was running lint. What happened was what internally lint does over here, it would run over and over again for every build release. And eventually it would combine all of the results and give it to me. In most of the scenarios, what would happen would be uh, it would give us the same errors because these are just different build variants, and I assume the lint rules, if there's an issue in my lint release, it's for obvious reasons I would have the same error in the debug and lint. So what is recommended is you should instead use lint release. uh, this could actually save a lot of performance time. If you use all three of them, it's going to run three times. For people who have multiple variants in their project, some have like five, I have five, so some have five or seven or eight. So for these people, it could save a lot of time. And from 7.0 Canary, you can run lint as well. So because lint is just going to be an alias for lint debug, so even if you run lint, it's just going to run once. Do not analyze test these test sources. So test. So test sources has two flag over here. Lint has two test source flags. One would be check test sources and another is ignore test sources. Tech check test sources is by default false, and hence it has no performance tweak in it. But for ignore test cases, it is a choice that you make. What it actually does is since if I do not have any reference in my test sources for lint, it would ignore all of it, and by default by default lint does not run uh, into test sources. It would only run in lint release variant. So it makes sense to ignore test sources if I do not have a reference, unless it also depends on the project that you have. Do not, this is a huge warning, do not add check all warnings. So if you add here false, it what it actually does is, so it's going to give you all of the warnings in the app together. It does not make sense to keep this. Uh, I'm sorry, I'm not sure about the check all warnings. There's a lot going on in my head right now. So, but I will check this and get back to you on the check all warnings thing. Mm, Then again, why should I use lint and what do I get? After all of this, I still ask the question. I still sometimes get confused. So, well, if you are worried about your code quality structure, because there are teams in the project, and there are always teams constantly changing, and the project or the product is a huge long way to go for it. If you want to maintain your code quality structure, this is your way to go. I find it really useful. Lint alert, uh, huge lint alert, I would say. It needs a lot of RAM, and it makes your build significantly slower, and you could actually see it when you run it. And It needs a lot of RAM. You need to add a lot of RAM to make sure that. So I saw a difference before running lint without giving it a specific amount of RAM. It would take 25 minutes something, and it would, if it has a lot of RAM, it came up to I think 11-12 minutes for me. I'm not so we'd still have to try how that goes. That's my summary for why upside and downside for it. I really hope this was helpful. Questions are welcome. Feedback is also welcome. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All
Thanks
right, Honey, we
for
have
this
some
awesome question.
questions. We have some questions, open questions, which our audiences would love to have your answers on.
Sure. Siddesh, before you start, okay? Is my screen still good, right? Okay.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah, we see you now.
Okay. I wasn't aware that I'm not visible. Sorry about that. So,
Um, okay, so we have several questions here, and I will read it for you. Do you see the questions?
I actually don't. Wait, just give me a second. Yeah.
Yeah, so you should be seeing them, and
Coach.
yeah,
Okay, I
let's
see the
sort it by.
questions. I will go with
Mhm.
the maximum the maximum votes to it. How adding lint how adding lint affect Android Studio performance because it is doing runtime? Does it impact build times? Is there any practice which we should avoid while making lint? I think lint needs a lot of RAM. Yes, it's it has. I wouldn't say it has performance problems. The one major change that you could do is the lint rules that are already enabled. You could disable the ones that you do not need, and that's so far about it. If anybody has another opinion towards it, it is definitely welcome. I'm also an intermediate. I'm still learning, so welcome all of the answers. Yes. Um, so I would go. to the next. What is the most useful custom lint tool that you've used? I'm not sure useful is the so it depends on your project. What makes a lint tool most useful for your project? Uh, I would so recently we've added the lint tool that I was just showcasing. Uh, the major difference that we had over that was there was a lot of inconsistency towards image views. Some of the parts, since there were new members added to the project, some of the parts we had app source compact, and some of the parts we had source. So adding a lint tool for it really helped, and I think it depends on the project. What makes your practices the most useful? You can create a custom rule for it. Can I have access to slides and project sample? Definitely. I will push the code to GitHub. I can. I'm not sure. Sidesh, are we going to send an email to people so that I can?
We can
I
post it on Twitter as well. So
Yes.
all the recording slides will be on Twitter, and
so
our partner communities also will share and retweet them.
Yes,
Great,
most
that makes
definitely.
a lot of sense. So I'll share with Siddesh Amira I push the code and share the link. You can visit over there. Uh, Next question is, why does lint matter in Android apps and in iOS apps other than for debugging? I don't really understand the question. You're comparing debugging with lint tool. I'm not sure if that's the question that you meant. Debugging is a lot of manual work, I would say. When you have a lot of team members, you are not sure that everybody is following the same coding practices as you are. Hence, lint tools help a lot there. Can we add lint tool for the code which ignores lint tool, for example? When I ignore lint tool using tools ignore. That's funny to me. I'm not sure if it is to everybody. So go ahead, try that. Let me know as well. I'm going to be surprised by this. Are there any other ways in building lint tool other than write tests for it? Are there any other ways? One way to one way to deliver functional requirements is actually writing tests for it. But writing tests, I mean, making a way for my coding structure practices, I'm not sure how that works. Uh, if you're asking this, feel free to post in the question again if I'm not answering the right one. Any good resource to learn about XML detectors and other detectors used by LINs? There is recent there are the recently they've recently added good documentation for lint that can be really useful for all the detectors that you can apply to your project. Are there any other ways to build lint tools? Other than, I'm not sure if the question helped me around if I haven't answered the question. What is your take on Klint? I haven't tried it. I'm not sure.
Okay, I guess that's it. But is there any question?
Thank you,
No.
Sidesh, and meet again. This was great.
Okay, I guess that's it. We'll take a break now, and you can still communicate with each other, and you can meet speaker, ask other questions as well in the lobby. So we'll be back in 15 minutes. Thank you.
Welcome.